couple of years ago, we were contacted by a startup company in the renewable energy business. They were a relatively young company, and they were in the process of acquiring a significant amount of real estate in Central California, and also in acquiring right-of-way for some linear infrastructure that would be associated with their renewable energy facilities. These were not small projects. These were big projects. So it was a lot of money. It was a lot of real estate. And the person that originally contacted us was referred to us by another surveyor, and we'll call him Rob. I'm not using his real name, but we'll for the purposes of this story, we'll call him Rob. So Rob was in charge of the right-of-way management and property acquisition for this renewable energy company. And Rob, I could tell from working with him, Rob was from a construction background. So he had worked in construction and had a role as previously as a construction foreman. And he got hired by this renewable energy company and was kind of filling the role as a facilities manager. But while the facilities were being designed and built, he was trying to fill this role. It really was a real estate management role, right-of-way acquisition role. And so we got hired by Rob, and we did a couple small projects for him. And eventually, we had to fire Rob and his company as a client, even though they had a lot of work. We realized that they weren't a good client, and we weren't a good fit for them. So why did I have to fire Rob and his company as a client? There were some particular challenges that we had with Rob. And it had mostly to do with the fact that he wasn't really prepared to do the job he was trying to do, which was a real estate management job. He kept trying to treat the real estate aspects of these projects like he would a concrete subcontractor or a carpenter subcontractor, because that was his background, and it just didn't work. So Rob didn't have any understanding of commercial real estate. He didn't understand right-of-way management. He didn't understand land surveying. He didn't understand permitting and entitlement. He didn't understand civil engineering. He didn't understand what it was like to work with a licensed professional that provides professional services. And so, but him and I just really struggled, right? Our relationship was a tense relationship. Rob would do things like repeatedly ask me to compete for his company's work based on low bid. He would try to get us to provide unit costs all the time. I need 17 surveys. What's your unit cost per survey? And we tried to work with Rob and explain to him, that's not how land surveying works. We're not pouring cubic yards of concrete here. Every site's different. Every parcel's different. And Rob just couldn't understand that. So even though this energy company had quite a bit of work, we ended up having to fire his company as a client. And one of the interesting things that happened in this relationship is the attorney that was representing this company in our part of California, told Rob and Rob's boss, hey, Landon is a good boundary surveyor, and you need to listen to what he's telling you. If you're smart, you'll listen to the advice that he's giving you. If you don't do that, you're going to have problems in design and construction. And even after they were told that by their own attorney, we still couldn't get them to really work with us in a way that was going to be in their best interests and that would help them build successful projects. So what's the point of that story? That's a true story, by the way. I'm not making that up. That's a real story. Just happened in the last couple of years. So the point of that story, or the lesson, is that you shouldn't make your facilities manager or your construction manager be your real estate manager. At least you shouldn't do that without the proper training. And I found in my 20 years as a land surveyor that happens a lot. It happens a lot more than why. Why does that happen? Well, most organizations with any significant amount of land or buildings or other infrastructure, civil infrastructure, at some point they have somebody in a construction management or facilities management or operations role, and this real estate management task just kind of gets globbed onto their job description, and we see it all the time, and it's unfortunate because the organizations that are doing that to their facilities manager they're not doing the facilities manager any favor, right? They're giving them this job that they haven't been trained for and they don't understand, and it just causes problems. So why shouldn't you do that? Why shouldn't you just assume that your facilities manager can be a real estate manager without any training? It's not the same job. They're different jobs. You know, being a real estate manager is a different job from being a facilities manager or construction manager or an operations manager, and they require different skill sets and different training. So how are they different? So I'm going to give you an idea of what a facilities manager or a building manager might do, and then we'll talk about what a real estate manager does. So, you know, your facilities manager, he's going to be in charge of, or she is going to be in charge of maintenance and construction primarily, right? They are going to be, you know, they may manage some operations, or at least the operations related to buildings and infrastructure. And, you know, typically we see those folks come from a background in either construction, maintenance, or engineering. That's typically their background. And those folks, your facilities manager or your building manager, they are used to dealing with vendors and contractors, not professional service providers. So, you know, they hire the janitor, they hire the general contractor for a construction project. You know, they might hire the sign company, the company that's going to build a sign. So they're not used to dealing with architects, engineers, land surveyors, attorneys. That's not the type of outside assistance they're used to getting. Now, how about a real estate manager? What does a real estate manager do? So a real estate manager, they buy, sell, and lease real estate or rights in real estate, things like easements. They handle permitting and entitlements as it relates to real estate and land development. And those folks are typically coming from a background in commercial real estate, in land use planning, or in law. And they are typically contracting with professional service providers like architects or land surveyors, commercial real estate brokers, other attorneys, land attorneys, title companies. And so it's a totally different job. Now, I'm not proposing or taking a position in this video that one person can't do both of those jobs. That's possible. It's hard to do. It's hard to be an expert in both of those things. And it's almost impossible without the right kind of training. And so you don't want to put your facilities manager in a position where they're trying to do the job of a real estate manager. If they don't have the proper training and they don't have the support they need, it's not going to work out well for them or for your organization. So now there is some overlap. You know, there are parts of those two job descriptions, facilities manager and real estate manager, that overlap. And those two folks, if you have different folks, you may even have a group of folks for each, they need to work together. It's really important to have your real estate management team working together well with your facilities management team, but it's not the same job. And if your organization's of any significant size, you should really have a different person doing each of those jobs. It really is a role that requires a dedicated person. So if you're gonna have one person try and do both of those jobs, there's three things you need to do. You need to train that person. So if your facilities manager is going to manage real estate, they need to be trained in that. You need to pay them well, right? Recognize they're doing the jobs of two people and pay them for that. And then you also need to acknowledge that there's going to be some limits to how, you know, to their expertise and what they can achieve. It's just hard to do both of those jobs. Just like it's hard to be a good land surveyor and a good civil engineer, it's hard to be a good facilities manager and a good real estate manager at the same time. They're not the same job. They require different skill sets. Usually people thrive in those roles. The people that thrive in those roles come from different backgrounds. So think about that. Don't ask your facilities manager to be a real estate manager without the proper training.